I'm the founder, as you said, of McKenna Co Solicitors, and we're based in Upper Pembroke Street in Dublin too. So McKenna Co, we're a multi-award winning law firm, having last year won the Sole Practitioner of the Year for both Dublin and all of Ireland. So our expertise are in both property and corporate law. Myself, I'm originally from County Cavan, but Dublin is certainly my home now.
Oh, very good.
So that's me in a nutshell.
And what part of Cavan did you grow up in, and what's your favourite sporting interests?
So I grew up in a town called Cootill or Shercock. And my favourite sporting interest would have to be Gaelic football.
Oh, very good, very good. But Cavan, of course, have been starved of success in recent years. Now, I know they won the Ulster title there a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah. We have our 5 All-Irelands to look back on those, so we hold on to those strongly.
Not as many as Dublin, of course. Yeah, indeed. And what about schooling? Did you go to school in Cavan, or did you go to boarding school, may I ask?
Yeah, I went to primary school in Cavan and secondary school in Monaghan, actually. So I was very close to the border, so spent kind of half my life in Cavan and half in Monaghan.
Oh, very good. Yes, indeed. You crossed the border from Cavan into Monaghan, but you were still in the Republic of Ireland, of course. But
absolutely.
yeah. That was, I suppose, that was a big, at a young age, that was a big change for yourself, going to boarding school, moving away from your home, I suppose. But it gave you some independence.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great experience.
Yeah. And do you think, looking back on that it made you the person you are today?
I think what made me the person I am today is probably from a very young age. I grew up on, we had a business, a small mushroom business. And I grew up kind of on that business from a very young age. So I became an entrepreneur at a young age in a way, in that I always seen how a business was operated. I was a big part of operating that business. So I think what made me who I am today is, I suppose, following in my father's footsteps and seeing how he operated a business, and always having that, I suppose, commercial element with me. So I think that's what and who made me what I am today.
Very good indeed. I know what you're saying there, that you had an entrepreneurial streak from a very young age, and you took on board any advice your parents gave to you in terms of running a business. Mm-hmm. What did winning the awards from the Law Society of Ireland in terms of your legal practice, what did that mean to you as a person?
Yeah, it was a huge achievement. When you're running a business, it's obviously very challenging and very tough. So when you win an award, especially a prestigious award from the Law Society of Ireland that regulates all solicitors in Ireland, it's very prestigious, and it means that your fellow colleagues, your clients, all see you, as one of the best in the industry. And, when you have tough days, something like that, brings you through, and it gives you great pride to carry on and continue to do better and be better.
Indeed. We'll move on to one of your more recent successes also, and you were elected as a council member of the Dublin Chamber of Commerce. What steps can be taken to increase female representation on the councils of professional bodies or on the boards of businesses?
Yeah, well, this is something very close to my heart, and definitely something I would like to see change in, especially coming from the legal profession. While solicitors, there's 55% of female solicitors in the legal profession, we do outweigh the males. There's certainly not gender equality in the legal profession, because most of the female solicitors are in junior positions. So we need to see change at senior level, and we need to see more women at senior level across the board in every profession, but certainly in the legal profession. So in respect of the chamber and what initiatives I would like to see, I'd like to see an initiative whereby companies and boards across the board, across Ireland, are obligated to have a minimum of 45 to 50% of a gender equal board of both male and female board members. It should be something that's obligatory, because otherwise it's difficult to make change. I think it was Iceland recently, for example, brought in legislation whereby both male and females were going to get the equal maternity and paternity pay. And when you see a country like Iceland bringing in legislation whereby they make it obligatory for there to be gender equality, that's when you have change. So what I'd like to see is an initiative whereby it's obligatory for boards across Ireland to have an equal percentage shareholding of gender equality. Like, I've been in many companies and on many boards previously whereby they were mainly male dominated with very few females. And you can see that these boards or these companies don't progress, or even when a female on that board might challenge the status quo, they're not successful on their challenge because they don't have the majority ruling, because they're not with like-minded people. So I think it's very important that an initiative is brought in whereby it's obligatory to have an equal gender board.
Thank you for that very comprehensive answer. Describe the impact the future of work has had on the legal profession.
Yeah, well, I suppose we've all seen from COVID and working from home, with the legal profession, it's very paper heavy, and you're, a pen pusher and a paper pusher. So specifically for me, in my expertise of corporate and property law, I've always worked from the office because it's just not possible to work from home. And I imagine it's very difficult in the legal profession in particular, due to the nature of the beast and the confidentiality of the documents, that it would be very tough to work from home and to retain that confidentiality of your clients. So because the legal profession is not digital, it's in no way digital in my area of expertise in corporate and property law, I think we need to move into a more digital era for the future of working from home to be realistic for the legal profession.
Indeed, and what you're saying there, because I have been to a number of solicitors' offices over the years myself, and one thing that strikes me is the amount of paperwork on the actual solicitor's desk. I don't know how they keep on top of whose paperwork is whose. It's, I can imagine that, for example, a title deed could get very easily mislaid in an office. So it's amazing how they can put their hands to title deeds and other legal documents at very quick notice. Yeah. In terms of, inflation is back with a vengeance. Mm-hmm. How can a solicitor support a client who wants to switch their mortgage, perhaps from variable rate to fixed rate? Yeah,
well, the two initiatives of switching a mortgage are: one, cashback. Some banks are still doing cashback, whereby the bank will give you an incentive to move from A to B. It's in around 2,000 to 3,000 euro. So that usually covers legal fees. So therefore you're out no money in doing the switch. And two, of course, the more important reason for switching your mortgage is the lower interest rate, because a lot of people, when they first took out the mortgage, they would have been on a fixed rate of, say, 1 to 5 years max, and then they move on to a variable rate. And it's a big jump from moving to, say, let's say the average mortgage of $500,000 K property, the average mortgage would be in and around, let's say, 1,600 a month. You'll be moving from 1,600 to, say, 1,800 from a fixed to variable rate. So that's an extra €300 a month that's out of your pocket. So by switching, you're simply moving from one bank to another and going back to a fixed rate. And you can continue to switch your mortgages. We have clients that do it every 6 months, in fact. So certainly, people are afraid of their unknown. They're afraid of moving from one bank to another, but it's a very easy process in totality in terms of applying for the mortgage and actually the switch being complete and you being on the new rate. It would take at most 3 months. So it's certainly something I would advocate for. It's better you having an extra 200 to 300 euro in your pocket every month, bearing in mind the current inflation of services, electricity, gas, and so on.
Indeed. It's quite hard on people at the moment, because we're seeing, increases in gas and electricity prices there very recently that are well above 10 and 15%. So the consumer is in for quite a shock, I suppose you could say, in the very near future. And I think the government rebate of €200, while it's welcome, it's not going to go very far, to be quite honest. We're also seeing large increases in the price of petrol and diesel at the pump also. So the consumer is being squeezed from all angles in those terms.
So in that regard, John, the consumer should be shrewd and think of ways that they can, make those savings back. And certainly one of those ways is switching, and not only switching your mortgage, switching other services such as electricity and so on.
Yeah. Indeed, that's a good point there you've made, to, challenge back your utility suppliers and see, can you get better deals elsewhere? It's the same with your bin charges, for example. In terms of, buying and selling houses, what are the issues that are holding up the purchase or sale of houses in Ireland at the moment?
Yeah, so there'd be three main issues. One, an executor sale. So an executor sale is whereby the person selling the property is called an executor. So the true title owner has passed away, and their executor, usually a child of the deceased, is selling on the asset. But in order for them to have legal capacity to sell on the asset, they need what's called a grant of probate or a grant of administration. That means that when the person has passed, the executor needs to prepare a number of papers with their solicitor to admit the estate to probate. That process can take quite a long time. And then if there's any issues with the papers when they're submitted to probate, the probate officer rejects the application, and you go right back to the start of the queue with hundreds of thousands of applications. So that can cause many delays. On average, a probate should only take about 6 months, but if there's issues with the papers, it could take a lot longer. So a lot of the time you have first-time buyers going into transactions. They're not being told, I suppose, fully of the consequences of an executor sale when the go sale agreed, and they just expect a quick turnaround. And it's unfortunate then when you have to give them the disappointing news that no, this sale can't close until the grant of probate issues. So an executor sale is certainly one of the reasons that holds up a transaction. The second one is a chain sale. So that's whereby you have someone who's selling their property and buying on. So you're reliant on the solicitor who's selling the property, the solicitor who's buying on, and then that solicitor might be in another chain. So you might have three chains in the one transaction. So you're reliant on each party in that transaction to all be as efficient as each other. And unfortunately, just that doesn't always happen. So you might have one party in that chain that holds things up because they have an issue with their life insurance, or they mightn't get life insurance, and so on and so forth. So a chain sale is something that will certainly hold up a transaction as well. And then the third thing is if there was defective title. So you get in the title deed, you're doing the due diligence on them, but there might be a discrepancy with the title. And if your client is reliant on a third party lender to fund the acquisition, then they would need clear title. And if they don't have that, the solicitor can't certify title to the bank, and the client can't get funding. So the three things are executor sales, chain sales, and defective title.
I suppose another one you could add there is in terms of executor sales where a property is being sold, is retention planning can be an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So retention whereby someone has carried out an alteration or extension that affects the structural integrity of the asset, and they didn't apply for planning or didn't have planning, they might have to apply, the vendor then might have to apply to the local authority for retention of the structure. Indeed.
Moving along, if you hadn't decided to become a solicitor, what would you be doing today, Lisa?
I'm definitely doing what I was born to do. I love being a solicitor. Never ever do I think it's a job. probably love what I'm doing a bit too much. But if I wasn't a solicitor, what I think I might do is perhaps counselling. It definitely has to be something working with people or for people or helping people through something. I would be a people person. So I think counselling, and maybe counselling of people who are in very difficult, vulnerable positions, such as perhaps people who are incarcerated. I'd love to, I suppose, help work through difficulties that people might be having whereby they're in very vulnerable situations or vulnerable groups.
That indicates to me, Lisa, that you're a great listener. Would that be true?
I hope so.
Indeed. Yeah. You're a member of Lift Ireland. That means Leading Ireland's Future Together. It's an initiative launched by Joanne and David Hessian. And they have 8 leadership traits. And just for the benefit of the audience, I just call those out: listening, positive attitude, respect, competence, dedication and determination, empathy and understanding, accountability, honesty and integrity. Which of those 8 leadership traits is closest to your heart?
Yeah, well, they're all very important in their own right. But if I was to pick one, it would have to be empathy. It's actually the quality we sponsor under Lift every year at their annual awards. So empathy is obviously the capacity to understand or feel what another is experiencing, and obviously the capacity to put yourself into the shoes of the other. And certainly the nature of operating a law firm shows empathy. Empathy is at the core of what we do. We always have to walk in our clients' shoes, and we always have to put ourselves in their shoes and imagine what they're going through in order to be successful, to understand their challenge. So certainly empathy would always be the most important quality for me. And it's something I would always emphasize within the firm, that we always need to put ourselves in the shoes of the client.
Another question here for you, Lisa. Why would a company apply for an extension to file its annual set of accounts? And if they do, is the company's registration office always accommodating?
Yeah, so this is section 343 of the Old Companies Act, whereby you fail to file your accounts on time. Obviously, it has serious implications as a director and secretary of that company. The sanctions that the CRO can take against you for failure to file is very serious. Of course, 1, you could get fined, 2, you could get struck off, and 3, you could be restricted as being a director in the future. It never really goes as far as that, of course, for failure to file returns, but certainly if you have history in failure to file them, the judge and the court will not look favourable towards those. So yes, the CRO, of course, they're human as well. They don't want to take you to court, but obviously whereby, they might see malice in you failing to communicate with them. Obviously, it doesn't happen overnight whereby they take you to court. You do get ample warnings. So I would advise that, you work with the CRO instead of against them. They don't want to take you to court. Obviously, they will, of course, work with you in order to allow you sufficient time to file the returns. But in the event that the registrar has commenced proceedings for late filing of the annual returns, then you're prevented then from filing them. You'll have to go through the district court in order to get your extension of time. So I would say cooperate with the CRO. They don't want to see late filings, but obviously worst case scenario is a fine and possible strike off of the company.
Yeah, and indeed with the CRO and fines, even with your first return that you do after 6 months after incorporating a company, the ARD, you have to get that done bang on time. Otherwise, you're looking at a fine of €3 per day. And you let that date roll on, you're looking at a pretty substantial fine before you know it. So it's always best, as you say, to keep in mind the CRO of a job to do, and it's best to cooperate with them. So I think that's very sound advice. And it's, make sure you're on top of your account dates, that you get your returns in time. Otherwise, the ball starts rolling and you're in big trouble eventually. And it's up to yourself as a company director and secretary to get those accounts in. Mm-hmm. The CRO are not going to chase after you unless it becomes absolutely critical that you're way behind on your date. And then you know about it when you get your substantial fine and potentially a court appearance, as you say.
Yeah, but remember that your accountant is obligated to make sure your accounts are filed. So have a good accountant. True. And then just diary it, have it in your diary that your accounts have to be filed by this time. You are obviously, while your accountant is obligated to prepare the accounts and file them, you can't sit back and blame the accountant either. And that's important because a judge has made a ruling on that. You are the director, so you need to reach out to your accountant to make sure that they have in fact filed them.
Yeah. Where would you like to see your legal practice go in the next 5 years?
Good question. Well, I didn't see it being as the success it is today. I didn't see it growing so quickly. So certainly in the next 5 years, I'd like to just continue the growth of taking on more staff. We have 9 in total now within a period of 5 years. We're coming up in our 5th year now. So I'd like to continue that growth in the next 5 years to maybe double the staff. And we have some, I suppose, exciting challenges ahead of us.
Indeed, and more luck to you. I think the 3 great learnings I take away from today's gift show interview is, first of all, have an entrepreneurial spirit. And it certainly helps if you grow up in a household where the entrepreneurs are already. I'll start again. I mixed up my words here. Sorry. The 3 learnings I have from today's gift show interview is, firstly, have an entrepreneurial spirit. I think it helps to have grown up in a household where your parents are entrepreneurs. Secondly, work on your empathy skills. Empathy is so important, whether it's in the legal profession or any other profession in today's business world. And thirdly, think very carefully about how the future of work affects your business. Because here today, Lisa talked about the impact of the future of work on the legal profession and the fact that the profession is so paper heavy, but there needs to be some form of digitalization in the business. So that's a great takeaway for today's interview. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience before I let you go, Lisa?
No, not at all. Just thank you very much for having me. It was great talking to you.
You're very welcome, Lisa. And on this point, and in this note, I will conclude today's gift show interview. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Sean.